Hello, I'm Leslie Chalmers, Director of the Jacksboro EDC, and I'm here at the Jack County Memorial Park. In just a few moments, I'll be interviewing Mr. Eugene Weldon. He's the visionary behind this project and the pastor of Christian Missions Church. I hope that throughout this interview, you are encouraged to come and visit this incredible monument and also take part of bringing this project to life. Good morning. I am Leslie Chalmers, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of serving as the Executive Director for the Jacksboro Economic Development Corporation. And I wanted to sit down this morning with Mr. Eugene Weldon and talk about the exciting new things that are taking place with our Jack County Memorial. So Eugene, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking about how interviews sometimes aren't as natural for us, but we're just going to sit down and have a conversation this morning and talk about how Jacksboro and Jack County is so blessed to have such a huge tourism draw with the Jack County Memorial. So let's start out just talking a little bit about the vision of this memorial and how that started and how that process really took place.
It really goes back 40 years. It goes back to 1978, I turned 18 years old. Vietnam ended in 73, and then the draft stopped. And then in 78, everyone turned 18, had to register for the military draft. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody talked about how we were fixing to go to war, and then that they were going to have a political war. The reason they were making us register, so they'd be ahead of the curve. Okay. Well, I began to look into military service. I ended up not going, and I ended up going to college and playing ball and stuff. But I began to look, as I looked into the military, I began to look around, and Jacksboro has such a great history.
Oh, it really does.
I mean, we've got the Lost Battalion from Jack County, and we've got all the Fort Richardson, the Indian Wars and everything that went on in this area. And as I began to look, we had a few monuments in different places to honor the Lost Battalion or different things, but we just didn't have a war memorial or a veterans memorial. And I traveled throughout the United States rodeoing, and every city I went to seemed like they had veterans memorials. Yeah. And I'd stop and I'd look at them, and then when I got back to Jacksboro, I'd go all around town and ask, why don't we have one? Right. With all the rich history and heritage we have, why do we not have a memorial? Absolutely. And this went on for years. And then back in 2016, Molly Smith and Dolly Tillman had died. They had the Jesus Name Church. And they had actually pastored that church for 65 years. And their family had been asking me, you know, if the building came available, what I would do with it. And I told them I'd make it a community center, a youth building, and we had a great facility, and I'd use it for that. Okay. And one day in 16, I got a call, and they asked me to meet them in the lawyer's office. I went down there, and they deeded the building to me. Wow. And the building is just behind us here where we're at the chamber. And I walked out there, and there was just a sheer bluff that went all the way out to the fire hydrant. Mm-hmm. And there was trees growing up, brush, and I walked out there, and I just said, God, what do I do with this? And instantly, a veterans memorial came to my mind. Yeah. And instantly I began to say, God, can I build a memorial? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I get emotional about it because it's something, you know, you talk about something for 40 years and you talk about it and then you believe that God said do it. Then it's something I believe that had to be done. And as I said, God, can I build it right here on this facility where this community center is going to be, and the Jesus Name Church, and very plain, Leslie, I heard that still small voice, and the Lord said, no, build it right there. Yeah. And it was just a piece of property with old buildings on it, and it was pretty rough. It's where the old oil depot used to be for the trains, and so I knew that I heard God speak, and I just walked off the hill and walked down here to the chamber, and I came in here and I said, who owns this land? And they told me EDC owned half of it, the city owned the other half. Mm-hmm. And I said, how much you want for it? I want to buy it. Yeah. And it started right there. I had enough money hid in my sock drawer from Sadie that I I went up there.
Men
and I
are
got it.
notorious for that, aren't they? The sock drawer.
But I went up there and I got my cash and I came back and I bought it.
Yeah.
And I began to clean it up that day. And every day that I go down there and start cleaning it up, I was finding syringes. I was finding drug paraphernalia every day.
Negative things that had taken place by
Yeah.
not being used.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's how the process began.
Yeah.
And I saw in my head, I saw a vision of the memorial. And I called an artist and they came up and they walked through it with me and they drew a picture of what I was seeing and I explained to them what I wanted. I began to call welders I knew, oil field guys I knew, and I said, this is what I want to do. And they just began to pitch in and we began to get it going. And May the 28th of 2018 was when we did our formal dedication for
I
it.
remember that day very vividly.
We had, 400 or more that were there
Standing room
live.
only.
And then we had a Facebook Live going, and there were 700 people watching it live. And so we know it meant a lot to a lot of people. And I
But
began
did you ever think, standing there that day on May 28th and looking back and thinking back 40 years, fast forward to 2018, that it would ever be accepted or that it would ever become what it now is?
I just knew God said do it.
Yeah, so you just
Okay.
followed.
I didn't know what was going to take place, why it was going to take place. I just believed that God said do it.
Yeah.
And actually the day that we dedicated it was the 40th anniversary of my graduating Jacksboro High School.
I
And so
remember
in the
saying that.
Bible, 40 years was a big deal.
Very significant.
And so it even meant more to me.
Yeah.
The day that we started uncovering and digging up to pour the curbs and gutters up here, they uncovered the original railroad tracks.
Oh, wow.
And as they began to uncover the railroad tracks, I was there watching it, and as I saw the cross ties and stuff, and immediately it hit me in the heart, and I began to weep. And the reason I did is because when I was a kid growing up in Jacksboro, that was the Flats.
Yes.
That was a part of Jack County that you didn't go to.
Right. Yeah.
And so I knew that God was saying we're redeeming
Yeah.
some cursed property,
Yeah.
but we're redeeming a people.
Bringing it back to life.
Bringing it back to life. And there's a lot more deeper things that went into it spiritually that I saw take place, and some things that I felt like God was saying about the racism, things in the United States. I believe that He's told me the church didn't get it right, and He wants the church to get it right. Well, now we've seen so much social unrest in our nation.
That's an understatement, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. We built a memorial, and then all of a sudden everybody else started tearing memorials down.
Yes.
And so that's how it all came about.
Okay.
Is it something I truly believe that God told me to build?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know all
Well, I
the
think
in-depth.
it's so important to follow that direction, and I'm a believer. I'm a very spiritual person, and when something like that is laid upon your heart, laid upon your mind, laid upon your ear, you have to follow that vision and see that fulfilled. And that's when, I always say that's when the magic happens, when you follow that direction and be obedient to God.
Yeah.
And to what He's telling you to do.
Because it's a fabulous facility.
Absolutely.
Okay, everything that came about in it all turned out really nice, and it all flows together. And it's not because I knew what I was doing.
Right.
It was because I saw it in my head. God
Right.
showed it to me, and all I had to do was put it together.
Well, we've been amazed, being here, working at the chamber for 3 years, and now the EDC for a year. I've been in this building 4, and the depot here does house tourism, and so we have, I've told Eugene this before. We have a multitude of people that travel through this area, stop at this historic building to look at our museum collection and our fossil collection. And always when they're here, they ask about the memorial. They come specifically to see the memorial or pay tribute or honor their loved ones that were from this area that have fallen in battle. And I can just say that standing there on May 28th, we were relatively still new back to this community, not new to the community itself, but had just recently moved back. And looking around that just entire event that day, it was filled with so much love, so much gratitude, and so much honor for our country and for those that have served. And I get emotional talking about that just because I am the wife of a first responder, and of course we have many family members that have served in armed forces, and my husband's family, they have family members that are listed on that wall. So I'm thankful to have such a structure that people can come here in Jacksboro and pay honor and tribute to those loved ones of theirs that they've lost, and that's.
And I don't have military in my background. I don't have military in my family, but as I was cleaning up over here, doing the things I was doing after we got it built, and just coming back and mowing the grass, I saw men that would come up there that were in Vietnam that I never even knew they were in Vietnam, that I've known most of my life.
And have a silencing moment.
I saw
silencing moment.
You know, at times they had friends with them, and they were showing the bricks of their friends that died there.
Yeah.
And one day I brought Dave Reaver, if you know who Dave Reaver is, I brought him in to speak at the high school. And Dave was a man that a phosphorus bomb blew up in his hand in Vietnam and disfigured him, but he's been an evangelist ever since and does a great job. But he ministered, and after he got through with the school, I saw one of our doctors at the school, one of our teachers, came down and began to visit with him. And they began to relive things that took place in Vietnam. And I watched both of them hug each other and cry. Yeah. And I realized
so you've been in that moment.
No, you don't know.
You don't know. You don't understand.
No,
that's a very just bring you to your knees.
Yeah, because
moment, remembering.
Romans 13:7, he says to give honor to whom honor's due.
Right.
I believe that we had in our community honored people that needed to be honored. And the vision of it, I saw a 3-part vision. The first one was the Veterans Memorial, and you mentioned being a first responder wife. And the second one had to do with building a first responder memorial. And the same way I saw it, and I've had the plan of coming back and building it. I'm kind of running a year behind because of some health issues and stuff, but I feel like that we're getting it done in appropriate time. I believe we're doing it when God wanted it done.
When you talk about first responders and what that next process or that next vision of that process looks like, we've already broken ground. There's a lot of construction going on and taking place now, and I know you've been in the community really working to educate and have conversations with different groups and civic leaders and stakeholders within the community. Explain to those that have not been part of that process or have not already had the privilege of hearing that vision, what's next? What is that First Responders Memorial, and why? Why that?
I'll tell you a story about that I watched right here in Jacksboro. 20 years ago, my mother called me one night and she said, "Hey, the house next door to us is on fire." And I lived on the other side of them, and I just broke and I ran out the door and I ran to the house, and the family had little children and dogs, and I ran around and it was fully engulfed and I couldn't get in, and I was hollering around the house, and as I came around the back of the house, the smoke was so thick, the wind was blowing that direction, and I actually had to get on my knees and crawl out of it because the smoke overtook me. And I got around the house, and the fire department began to show up, and they began to fight the fire. And I asked them if there's anything I could do, and they stuck me on one of the trucks to hold a water hose. And as I was holding it, I watched all they were doing, and I saw men that I grew up with. I saw men that I played ball with growing up, and they were all out there doing everything they could do. And they realized that they were fighting a gas fire because the gas was still burning.
Oh, wow.
And they said, "We've got to get the gas off." Well, I watched a young man that I grew up with, let them soak him down with water. And he walked up in the middle of that, knelt down with a crescent wrench, and he shut the gas meter off. Knowing that any time it could have blown up, there could have, and it could have.
But he was willing to take that risk.
But he was willing to take that. And these are all volunteers in our community.
Right.
We don't have paid firemen in our community.
Right.
Right. They're all volunteers. And I watched them volunteer that. For the last 25 years, I've been co-chaplain for the Sheriff's Department, and so I get calls from the DPS, the Police Department, Sheriff's Department, to go to the worst of the worst. And as you go into those scenes of accidents and different things, you see all of these men and they're doing everything they can to save lives. And they've got to see all of this, and they've got to go through all that trauma that's involved. And once again, I don't believe that we've given them the honor and the respect that they need.
That's due.
And so that's something that I believe that we want to build the first responder memorial.
Okay.
The vision I saw was to use rock and some of the similar metal and stuff we did with the veterans, but in the middle of it, build a bell tower.
That's probably my favorite part. You know, when Eugene presented this a couple of weeks ago, I've seen it. I've seen the presentation both for EDC and the Lions Club here in town. And when we talk about the bell is just—it's pretty neat.
And you know, my vision all along has been, you know, the bell that's on our courthouse square. Mm-hmm. You know, it came out of the courthouse, and I would love to put that on the top as
that
the
rich
center.
history
Yes,
that we
ma'am.
Keep talking about.
That it's there.
Yeah.
And it's there for all of them to see, because you know, years ago that bell represented the call to arms. In essence, it was a call for the first responders. And so I would love to get that. You know, I've requested that. Whether that'll ever take place, I've been searching.
We're working on it.
And I've been searching for another bell. You know,
Yeah.
and so we're at a place now where we're looking for the history. You know, some of the history that we have. We had 3 deputy sheriffs that died in the 1890s. 2 of them down here on Lost Creek, down here close to where the memorial was. And so we want to honor those guys. We had a highway patrolman that graduated Jacksboro High School that died in an accident. He was working an accident scene. He got hit by a drunk driver and died. And he's buried up here at Oakwood. And we want to honor those people.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's the second phase of this. Is to get this done. We'd love to dedicate it on September the 11th.
Yeah. Such a memorable day for not only this community as a whole, but just as the nation and
Yes,
what
ma'am.
our nation went through on that day, and thinking back of all the lives that were given, both civilian and first responders that made the ultimate sacrifice on such a horrific day.
The theme of September 11 was "We'll never forget." Mm-hmm. Well, I watch now, you know, that policemen are in danger every time they go somewhere.
Yes, sir,
They don't know what they're going to walk into, and they're coming under attack and assault and defund the police and all those things. It's insane.
One of the things I love most about a community like Jacksboro, and I think it just comes with such a rich history for one, but small, rural-minded, caring people, is the fact that we still have that honor and respect for the men and women in blue and firefighters and first responders as far as dispatchers, and just that respect. And that's been lost in other communities, you know, throughout our state, throughout our nation. And it's encouraging for something like this to be planted for people to really remember what those men and women do on a daily basis, and the fact that they might not come home after that shift.
And I don't know that we forget it here in the small town, but I believe that sometimes we neglect it. I believe that we don't truly honor them and respect them the way we should.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times it is just from neglect.
Yes.
And so
just like you have, you know, Eugene has had this calling on his heart. I always say, you know, being a wife of an LEO for now nearly 20 years, doesn't seem that long, but that's a calling.
Yes,
what they do is a calling.
Yes.
And it's a passion, and they feel called to serve their communities and the people within those communities.
Because if it's not a calling, if they don't understand it's a calling, if they believe it's just their job, they're not going to lay down their life.
That's right.
They're going to hold back.
Yeah.
And I believe that, you know, John says that greater love has no one to lay down their lives. Well, if you know this is your calling, you know this is what you're about, then you're going to lay down your life for your friends. You're going to be willing to walk into the worst of the worst.
So you've had phase 1,
yes,
which is complete, beautiful. And I will say this, I'm backtracking a little bit here, but we made mention of this at a couple of meetings the other night. If you have never been to the Veterans Memorial or the War Memorial, I would encourage you to do so at night, because
it's the most peaceful place in town.
It's one of the most beautiful things. I work late a lot and come out of here, especially wintertime when the sun is already set. Yeah. And to have those lights shining on all of those flags and to see those names and just such a beautiful tribute to those lives, it's pretty chill binding. It will stop you in your tracks. And
I'd like to believe it's because I've walked every inch of that property. I've raked every inch of that property. And all the time I was praying and I was speaking God's blessing and His peace. And I truly believe it's one of the most peaceful places we have in our community. I believe it's a place that is just unbelievable as you walk in at night.
Yeah, I would agree.
That you do find a peace and a serenity that's there.
Yeah.
And I believe it all has to do with when we do, what we do is under the Lord.
That's right.
When we do it.
Having a servant's heart.
Yes, sir.
You know, Stuart and I have really tried to instill that in both our kids. Have a servant's heart. And you certainly have had that, and we appreciate that. You know, we talk about phase 1, the completion of that. Phase 2 is under construction.
Yes,
now, I personally get a little giddy about phase 3 just because I work for an organization, a group of people that is all about improving and building upon our previous success for this community. And so I see phase 3 as a huge bridge connecting those two gaps, not to be cheesy with that. But do you want to talk about phase 3?
Sure. At the same time, and Leslie, when I say that I saw this, I believe that God showed me every bit of it. I believe that I saw a vision of it, and I saw each one of them. And the third one was down at the old wagon crossing across from Lost Creek, is to get the old train track bridge and that's out at Fort Richardson, bring it up there and put it across that railroad crossing and join City Park with this. Okay, I didn't know the city was going to redo all the park when I started this project. But if we could tie them all together with Fort Richardson and have a walkway to cross there, that old trestle bridge is something that's been here. You know, everybody's seen your pictures have been made with that.
And my son included.
And whenever this came about, as I saw it 5 or 6 years ago, I went to the fort and I said, hey, what I got to do to get this bridge? And they said, if you want it, it's yours. And I said, I want it. And I started calling different oil field people and talking about
who can help us make this happen.
Yeah, and now the vision that I had for it, I believe the city has picked it up. The city has talked about making a walkway where the kids don't have to walk down Main Street across the bridge, a busy highway. Yeah.
And the city of Jacksboro is actually in the process right now. They've applied for a grant to make that happen, since it is a historical, pretty much a historical monument, a historical structure, and connecting, like you said, Sewell Park with this side of town. And it's so, I hate to use the word cliche, but thinking back what you said earlier about people didn't go to that side of town, and now we're connecting
bringing them together. Yeah, because you can actually cross the bridge and go down there. You can turn right and you can go to Fort Richardson. Yeah. If you go left, you can go all the way to the lake down the trail. And so it ties it all together.
Again, just another tourism draw too. I mean, what a beautiful structure to move. And, and I know that's going to be an undertaking, but we've already had people that have stepped up to the plate yet again. Maybe they weren't able to give from a financial standpoint, or they're in a situation they can't volunteer their time or efforts because of age or, health issues. But we've had others be able to step up and say, hey, I have the machinery to make that vision come to life, and that's taking place as we speak.
Yeah, and it's been awesome to watch, that the city's going to take a part of that and help complete it. Yeah. It's something that, and where we're at right now, Leslie, is, I believe so much in the Veterans Memorial and getting that first step done that Christian Missions paid for the majority of that, the people at Christian Missions. And it was a part of our outreach ministry that I believed in, and the people believed in me, and so we helped get it done. Well, my board told me we weren't going to do the same thing on this one. But everything that we've done right now, all the rock work and everything that's up right now, every bit of it has been paid for, and it's all been just people that have come and given us some donations.
And I know you may not be able to, because I come from a background in fundraising, and I know you may not be able to talk about some of those donors. But I know I speak on behalf of the Jacksboro Economic Development Corporation. We were happy to give to that because that is a tourism draw.
Yeah.
And with tourism brings people, and with people brings jobs, and with jobs bring housing, and it's a trickle effect. But can you talk about maybe a couple of the other ones that have really stepped up to the plate and made that vision a reality through donations?
Well, like the EDC has made a donation for us. The Lions Club bought bricks. I met with the fire department last night. They're going to buy some bricks. The Vision
Jacksboro
Group,
Vision Group.
they made a donation, and we had one individual that gave a donation, and that's helped pay for everything we've got right now.
See, and that's what I love, because everybody has that buy-in to it.
And the biggest thing that I had with the donations is I didn't want anybody's name over there except first responders.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody's name over there except military.
Yeah.
My name's not anywhere on the thing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears is
Yeah.
all that's there.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to put up, signs that said made possible by this donation.
That's right.
Okay, it was because it was the right thing to do,
Right.
not because we're going to get our name on a plaque somewhere.
That's right.
I'll be glad to buy a full page and put their name in the Jacksboro paper
Yeah.
when it's all said and done. But it was just about doing it because it's the right thing to do.
That's right.
And that's where I believe that we're at, is we've got to give honor to whom honor's due.
I agree.
And I believe it's a part of the blessing of Jacksboro as we do this. I believe that we're going to bring some new and prosperous things in because of tearing down some of this old tradition.
Old, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
What was it I heard at a seminar the other day? It's, the 7 worst words ever put into a sentence. It's always been done this way. So we're breaking some of those cycles and moving forward and keeping that rich history alive by investing in some very, very positive change.
Oh, yes, ma'am, for
Yeah.
sure.
So let's talk a little bit about how people can be involved, how they can be a part of such a historic change in our community. We talked about bricks.
We're
We
selling
talked
the bricks,
about
yes, ma'am.
donations and volunteer efforts as well.
I've had a lot of the labor that goes into it. Guys have given, welders and
Yeah.
rock layers and different ones have donated a lot of their time,
That's incredible.
to do that. I've had, construction guys that brought dirt and different things, and so there's a lot of just the labor involved that is donated. We're going to have to lay electric lines, water lines. We're going to do those things, and we'll do a lot of that stuff ourselves. The digging of the ditches and burying those lines and doing things. The electrician, they've donated their time to put in the lighting and things. But we're down to a point right now, buying of the lights, that's one of the most expensive things of it.
Electrical, anybody that's ever done construction, electrical and plumbing.
Yeah. And then we're going to finish out with sidewalks down in there to circle the whole facility, and so the cement and all those things that,
Is
we're gonna
another
have.
way that people can contribute and give.
Yes, ma'am.
And then bricks, we talked a little bit about the bricks.
Yes,
You want to
ma'am.
explain?
The bricks are $100 a piece.
Very affordable.
They're, yes, ma'am, and if we get over 200 bricks, a order at a time, then we make approximately $60 per brick.
Okay.
And if we don't order that many, then it goes back, to 50-50. And we didn't sell enough bricks off of the Veterans Memorial to really help finance things. It helped right at the end to help close things out, but this is to help continue to build and do what we're doing. And so they can order the bricks. We've got a website that is Memorial Park, I guess, Jacksboro, and that they can go to, and it shows drone footage. It shows.
And do everything right from there.
They can do it there. They can come down here to the chamber, and we've got some handouts here that they can fill out.
Okay.
We're going to build a kiosk and put it over there just like the one y'all have out here in front
I love
of your
that.
building.
very informational and
Yes,
helpful for when people stop by and
Yes,
visit.
ma'am, and that'll be for the travelers or anybody that comes, they can have it right there, they can have the information, it'll show them how to log on to the website, and if they want to do that, or they can take the brochures and do it there.
3 great ways, 3 important ways to really give. For me, the 4th, and probably the absolute most important, would be prayer.
Yes, ma'am.
Praying over that, and that costs you nothing except time and just devout prayer to God and asking Him to continue to bless this community, bless this project, bless Mr. Weldon for bringing this to life and following God's vision for our community and what He laid upon his heart 40 years ago. It's exciting. I'm excited to be a part of this community and watching all this growth and development and how we're embracing that and helping that to really, just pave the direction for where this community is headed, and this is a huge part of that. So
I believe it is. I believe it's a huge part of the spiritual side
I agree.
of any of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me
Yes, ma'am.
today and having this conversation and educating not only our community but others that might be watching, that have had, family members that have served, in the military as first responders, that really have a vision and just have a passion for helping this community and learning more about this incredible project. You've done a great job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's not just for someone that was in the military from Jack
Absolutely.
County.
Absolutely.
Anybody that has a loved one that have moved here to the county, that want to put a brick to honor their family
Make it
member.
happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I
Yes,
know
ma'am.
you have followed God's direction, and thank you for doing that.
I appreciate it.
It's definitely been profitable as far as it coming to life, and God has followed through as He says He always will.
Yes, ma'am.
And so thank you for sitting down and having this conversation with me
Well, thank
today.
you for doing it. Appreciate it.